So we've titled this program Enterprise Without Continuity, an attempt to transform the typical Okonkwo and Sons to Okonkwo PLC. Okonkwo and Sons, typically what you call your mom and pop shops. Though I'm an Igbo man, and I believe I'm fluent in both English and Igbo languages, I still struggle with the exact English equivalent of the term, Ibambo. For those of you that are not from the Igbo part of the world, Ibambo is the entrepreneurial philosophy of Igbo. Basically, the Igbos are made up of the 5 states of Nigeria, where we are, happen to be the headquarters of the Igbo region, as it is. Now, this Ibambo, as a philosophy, manifests through the little beginnings of Imoahia, as we say it, which is learning a business, Imoolaka, learning a skill, Igbos, which basically playing the middleman to make some commissions. All of these emphasize the self-sustenance principle of the Igbos. And this self-sustenance is emphasized by the Igbo saying, I'm sorry, it's a strong Igbo word for those of you that are not Igbos. Basically what this says is, a man or a woman that works so hard in labor is then able to produce not just enough for himself or herself, but to sustain the family. Again, emphasizing the self-sustenance principle of the Igbos. Basically, at the center of this entrepreneurial philosophy of the Igbos is what we call apprenticeship system. Again, in an Igbo word that is called Igbo Dibo. Again, people can call it Dibo slave in English, but that's not what it is. It's a concept of apprenticeship where an apprentice is inducted into a business by a master or mentor over a 4 to 7 year period. And this typically, at the end of the day, this apprentice is set off with seed capital and hopefully with the blessings of the master. And he goes on to start his own business. And the cycle continues. This apprenticeship system is the essence, at the center of the Igbo business culture. And again, the nature of Igbo business is typical family businesses that start with your normal, again, in America they call it mom and pop shops. The business starts in Nigeria, in the East. If my name is Nwuke, it becomes Nwuke and Sons. But you have a lot more of Okonkwo and Sons in these businesses. So basically, that to me is, personifies that traditional SME business of the Igbos. And these businesses start as family businesses. Basically, the founder uses the concept of the family business to sustain the family, and over time hopes that at the end of the day, hands over the business to the heirs. Typically in line with Igbo inheritance culture, this is called the Diokpara, which is the first male born of the family. Unfortunately, in that culture, the females are not considered a part of that inheritance. We are going to talk a little about that later on. Now, you will think that with the elaborate structure of Ibambo, Imoahia, sustained through apprenticeship, etc., and then inheritance culture, which is supposed to ensure handover from one generation to the other, that these businesses will be able to live beyond their founders. And if, as a measure of success, you look at the Nigerian Stock Exchange, for example, you want to see and believe that Igbo businesses would dominate the list of the businesses of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, given the entrepreneurial reputation of the Igbos. But unfortunately, that is not the case. If you look at the stock exchange today, you hardly see any Igbo-originated business on the exchange. And these businesses have not been able to pass the test of time, and they felt either the exit of the founders, either through death, retirement, or incapacitation. So, now, when these businesses fell, given that the essence of the Ibambo I talked about personifies the Igbo spirit, it's not just a failure of businesses, but it's a failure of the society. At the end of the day, the failure leads to a total breakdown in the socio-economic fabric of the community. And you may argue that this is not peculiar to Igbo or even Nigeria in terms of failure of businesses. But while that could be an option for other people, for the Igbos, it's not. It's the essence of who we are. It's the essence of our effort, it's the essence of our society. And when this business fail, it leads to a total waste of generations. Every generation strives, and when they go, everything goes with them. And the society is what for it. Now, what somebody may say, if you've been around in the East or in Nigeria for upward of 2-3 decades, I'm sure you'll be able to see some of the business that I talk about today. At their high times, these were the economic drivers of the country, not just in Igbo. If you foam, in Nigeria, it was the largest foam manufacturer in Nigeria. Star Pepper Mill, Izuchukwu Transport. Then if this is Enugu, if you lived in Enugu and you never entered Lobito, Adam and Eve to buy clothes, they are totally outside the fashion cycle. But today, what has happened? These businesses are nowhere to be found. I'm going to talk about one of those businesses that, to me, the failure of that business personifies the West that has become our culture. Ekene Ichukwu used to be the largest interstate bus company in Nigeria. I would say West Africa. It was so popular that it became like a British Airways of Nigeria. If you needed to transport anything, maybe send your child unaccompanied from Lagos to Enugu or Enugu to Kaduna, you don't think twice about it. You put him or her on Ekene Ichukwu, and somebody will pick him, the child somewhere, and you are happy to do that without thinking about it. Now, the reputation of Ekene Ichukwu in terms of credibility, in terms of trust, was so much, not just within Nigeria, but across this network of suppliers. Because it used basically Mercedes-Benz buses, Daimler-Benz had to come and locate in Nigeria, just across the corner in Enugu. And that's the history of Anamco, if you know Anamco. It was Mercedes-Benz coming in to set up, to provide support to Ekene Ichukwu. Ekene Ichukwu could easily have become the greyhounds of Nigeria. For those of us that are used to the American transport system, Greyhound is basically the largest interstate bus transport, not just in America, but in Canada. Now, there's a bit of a similarity in the history of these two. Greyhound was founded in 1914. The founder died in 1954. But the death of the founder did not impact on Greyhound. Today, it's still the dominant interstate transport bus company in the US and Canada. Now, the issue for me, what is it that they did that we didn't do in Ekene Ichukwu? You can imagine the West that have been, wrought on the environment by the failure of a company like Ekene Ichukwu. While I was in banking, I happened to have been in London, and I lent money to a lot of these family businesses by when I started banking in 1991. By the time I left banking in 2013, end of 2013, most of those companies were no longer to be found. All you read and hear about is the families, either in court or fighting themselves on the street, etc. I really got worried, and I wanted to understand, as a person, what could it be that is different from the Greyhound I talked about and our own Ekene Ichukwu? And this failure is not peculiar, as we say, to ourselves, but what did the people that did it right do that, and what can other people borrow if they want to change the pattern? So I wanted to study, I did a doctoral study on family businesses. And I chose, as part of enhancing my experience, to get a job in a family business. So I currently work with a company called Coscharis. I joined them in 2014 as a deputy group managing director, after I left banking as an executive director. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about Coscharis later on. Now, but the things I want to point out here is, being within Coscharis, a part of the decision-making process, and again, the insights I get from the doctoral study I was doing then, it began to become obvious to me what are the apparent reasons for the failure of these businesses. One of the key things that most of you know and read in the papers, the families start the failure. The failure of the families, lead to the failure of the businesses. All you hear about is inter-family quarrel that spill into the businesses. There are no trust between the members of the family. In terms of managing the family cash, it's taken as part of business. Business cash is taken as family cash. So people can, as the lifestyle expands, especially as the second generation come on board, you have expanded lifestyle, which is funded from the cash flow of the business. They're not able to separate the family from the business. Now, these are the very obvious reasons that are apparent to most people. However, there are a lot more reasons that are more fundamental, perhaps not as obvious as others, that lead to the failure of these businesses. And I'm going to dwell on a few of them. One of those is what I call control obsession by the founders. Most people that own these businesses desire to have absolute control of their family businesses. They don't believe that anybody can contribute, both in idea and in capital. And if you remember, these businesses started as what I called Okey Nwuke and Sons. These are small micro businesses that eventually grow up or hope to grow to big businesses. But some of them at some point, you find they require additional funds to make a step change from where they were to the next level. And what are the options at that point? Either you bring in equity, but our people will not even consider it. They want to have 100% control of their businesses. Perhaps some of this morbid fear for allowing people get a stake in their businesses come from the chronicled failure of a partnership. We all know that partnership don't work or have not worked in Nigeria. But however, most of our founders of these businesses failed to realize that you can have a structure where you can bring in stakeholders. It could be minority stake, so you have funding, you still have control of the majority control of business, but a little bit of dilution. So this business gets the cash and gets additional input from a governance standpoint that it begins to make the change from what Okey Nwuke and Sons becoming Okey Nwuke PLC. Another key reason why some of these businesses fail is what I call nepotism. In running the family businesses, what members believe that everything should be about the family. Jobs are for the family. Whether the family member is interested or not, it's not an issue. It has to go to the family. And you totally ignore a lot of more qualified outsiders who can come and add value to the businesses. Now, I think at this point, I'll tell you a bit about why I'm in Kostaris today. And I'm sure, like you saw, as I've been introduced, I'm not a Madoka. So I shouldn't be in the business. And a lot of founders of the business, other founders have asked the owner of Kostaris, what the hell are you doing with this guy? And paying him what is considered to be exorbitant salaries. So what is he? Why don't you get one Madoka person? And again, I'm not from Navy on top. I'm from Imo State. So, again, I'm going to dwell on this a bit to show you how some other founders have done things a bit differently and why the results have been, again, different. Kostaris as a business is a typical product of the apprenticeship system that we talked about. After years of apprenticeship, the founder got 200 naira in seed capital in 1977. We started the history of Kostaris that become from Madoka and Sons to what it is today, Kostaris Group. So I joined Kostaris in 2014, like I said, and I sit on both at the governance board and the management, executive management team. What has happened in the course of that period, with my being in the business, we've been able to hire a lot more outside scale professionals who have strengthened the governance framework of the company, and we've been able to take decisions, strategic decisions and actions that kept the company going, even in the period of turbulent environment. One other thing that Kostaris has done that is different is the founder has an attitude that you need capital at some point, so it cannot always be internally generated capital to run the businesses. So what has he done? He has kept an open attitude to allowing outside investors to come into the business. So today, in the last 6 months, we completed an investment, a sale of stake to a private equity company in Nigeria, who have come in minority stake, but as you know, private equity companies are not passive investors. They have come in to join both the governance board, management, to strengthen everything that we do. And the cash that they brought in equally helped in implementing key strategic projects, Kostaris Farm, that is in Anambra, Anako, the largest farm outside the whole of eastern Nigeria today. Rice mill, irrigation, 2,500 hectares, etc. So it's a large project. You would have had to borrow money if not for the entrance of these people, and the board have been strengthened. So I mentioned this about Kostaris to let you know a few people have done things differently. But beyond nepotism that I've talked about today and ownership structure, there's a need for governance of the families that own the businesses, that which has been lacking in a part of the world. Yes, we talk about governance, and all our mind go to governance of the businesses, which is fine. But nobody had thought about governing the families that own the businesses. Like I said, once the business family is in disarray, it's all a matter of time, the business to get dysfunctional. Now, and there have been a lot of studies done by experts that say that unity of the family is a strong predictor of the succession process and continuity of the businesses. So that says that if we require unity to run a business, then the family needs to be governed. Now, talking about governance, just basically putting in structures and principles and processes, just like you have in businesses, to run the family, because the family matters to the business. And it's not a question of either the family or the business. Both of them must be treated as important part of that dynamics. Now, when we talk about governance, the model is such that other family businesses have done that successfully. You have a family council that helps, which is the equivalent of the board for the family, as you have the board for the business. The family council typically is a framework that brings the family members where issues around the business is discussed, how participation in the business is done, succession to the board and management, etc. So at the end of the day, there is an argument that the successful family combined with a well-run business is the only way you can go through succession and be successful. Now, I'll talk about the implication for Ndi Igbo if we talk about succession. Governance is important. You have to govern both the family and the businesses. You have to ensure that the best person, I'm not saying the best man, because that means, again, excluding the women. The best person for the job needs to be hired, and that best person doesn't have to be a member of the family. The family can benefit from the investment through streams of dividend income and leave management to the hands of outsiders. And for us to transform Okonkwo and Sons to Okonkwo PLC, there are a lot of paradigm shifts that need to happen. One, we need to realize that that apprenticeship system that drove us from start as an SME cannot sustain the business going forward. And I need to equally mention that, unfortunately, the apprentices are never the children of the founders. So when they get ready, they go on and run successful businesses, and you end up handing over the business to your children who had little or no experience from running the business. So we need to know that maybe hired employees might be the best way out. One other paradigm shift to be, like I said earlier on, nepotism. Business must be run as business, whether family or otherwise. If you need to hire the best person for the business, even when it's a family business, you have to be the best person for the job. One other paradigm shift that needs to happen is the role of female children in the family. If you look in the room today, if I use the word, I might be exaggerating, the more serious children today are the female children. I have 2 daughters. I'm not going to downplay the impact of my son, but I know what I get from my female children. The fact that you totally ignore this whole group of intelligent, industrial people and hand over to the child, your first son, whether he's interested or not, is actually a major paradigm they have to shape. And another paradigm should be the ownership structure, which I talked about earlier on. It has to be such that it makes it attractive for investors to come into the business, to add both capital and governance. I would like you to notice that some of the companies I see on the screen today are all family businesses. Ford is over 100 years. Walmart is there. Michelin, they're all human beings. Mercedes-Benz is a human being. They've been around for a long while and are still going strong. So basically, if we need to transform Okonkwo and Sons PLC, we have to do something different. We cannot be doing the same thing and expect a different result. That's what is called madness. Thank you.